This is why you should always actually listen to what children tell you. This 9-year-old boy literally lived on midnight snacks because every night he would come downstairs and eat a ton of junk food. Until one night, he was in the kitchen and thought he heard something from around the corner, but everyone was asleep. So he peeked around the corner and that's when he saw a man guzzling milk straight from the carton. The terrified boy ran upstairs, got his parents, and they all checked out the kitchen, but it looked normal. They told him that his imagination was just playing tricks on him, but the boy knew what he saw. So days went by, but the boy always felt like he was being watched, until one night he looked up at his ceiling vent and saw 2 eyes staring back down at him. He ran to go tell his parents, but again, they told him it's just your imagination, stop bothering us. Then the boy smelled this really horrible stench coming from the ceiling, so he convinced his parents to cut into it and see what was up there. And there they found that same skinny man who was drinking the milk dead in the ceiling.
It's just come out that a shrine for Madeleine McCann was found only months after she went missing. In December of 2007, a couple who were retired had a vacation home in Portugal. They were walking through the same reservoir that the police have just finished searching again, and they found this shrine. The shrine consisted of rocks leading into the water. It makes you wonder, could that be where she is? There was also a picture of Madeleine, flowers, and more stones. Their daughter was actually the person who found it, and she went, "Oh, guys, come here. It looks like someone must have died here." I'm guessing she didn't know that Madeleine was missing. It had only been a few months. And yeah, they assumed that it was a memorial until the parents realized, oh my God, that is the missing girl from the news. The couple informed the Portuguese police back in 2007. They never heard anything back, and the shrine was removed by someone. We don't know who. Now that the German authorities are looking through this reservoir, the couple came forward again, and they got proper statements out of them and everything. Who do you think left this shrine? Do you think that maybe it was just a stranger, or do you think they had something to do with the case? And if you're completely unaware who Madeleine McCann is, which I'm sure by now most people know who she is, I can make a whole video on it if you want. This case never fails to baffle me. It's crazy how it's one of the biggest cases ever and we know so little about anything. I have no idea who I think did it, but I would love to hear your theories below. I think that every theory is possible and believable, which is why it's such a difficult case to look into. It's also really devastating and sad that this little girl has never been found. I would love to hear what you think and what you think about this information. I can't believe no one's heard about this until now. They found this shrine in 2007. It's 2023. But yeah, I would love to hear your theories on what you think happened to Madeleine McCann. Do you think that she's still out there, or do you think that her life ended when she was taken? Or do you think the parents did it? Because the cow pole thing, it kind of makes sense, but also, I don't know. What do you think? Let me know.
Nah, cause I feel like people either don't understand or they underestimate just what these things are capable of. Like, the scariest thing about them isn't how strong they are. Let me tell y'all a story. I couldn't find the original post, but basically a zookeeper was answering questions when somebody asked what was the scariest thing that ever happened to her. She said that when she first began working, they started her with the chimps. Horrible place to start, by the way. It's like learning how to ride a bike down the Grand Canyon. And one of her jobs was to take empty food bowls out of every chimp's cage in the morning. And the chimps were so smart that they learned to push the food bowls right up to the cage door where the keepers could easily grab it. Well, on her third or fourth day, she noticed one of the chimps' bowl wasn't right at the door. It was a couple feet back where she would have to reach her arm in and grab it, which she was about to do when another keeper showed up and basically screamed at her to stop. The older keeper scolded her and told her never stick your hand in a cage like that, especially with a chimp. The keeper then told her to look into the cage. The new keeper crouched down and peered inside, where she saw one of the bigger male chimps sitting just where you couldn't see him if you were standing up straight. Her stomach dropped, as she realized if she would have reached in for the bowl, she more than likely would have gotten her arm torn off. But the part that she said really freaked her out, she swore that the chimp almost seemed disappointed when she noticed him. To this day, she's convinced that chimp was fully aware that she was new and planned on taking advantage in the worst possible way. The scariest thing about chimps, as smart as you think they are, they're smarter.
Here's how they caught the most notorious serial killer of all time, Bundy. Ted was a well-spoken, well-dressed man who oftentimes wore a sling or crutches to give his victims a false sense of security. The guy literally even worked for a crime prevention center to throw the cops off his tracks. Ted always used that sling trick, the same Volkswagen Beetle, and even gave out his real name to his victims. Now, the cops started to get a lot of evidence on Bundy, but didn't believe it was him because he was such a clean-cut law student and didn't fit the bill of a killer. But once they developed databases, they started to track him down. He got arrested once, but the first time his parents bailed him out. But Bundy was captured again, and this time he escaped by jumping out the courthouse window. He was captured a third time, but escaped by digging a hole through the cell ceiling. But in Florida, a police car then pulled him over and got him for good. After his 4 years of terror, Ted confessed to taking more than 30.
Husband kept getting sick, so he sets up a hidden camera. What he sees will shock you.
Dr. Chen and his wife, Dr. Yu, had been married for 10 years. One day, Dr. Chen started to get sick, and he could not figure out for the life of him what exactly was making him sick. Now you have to understand that this illness lasted for months. So one day he became suspicious of his wife. So he set up a hidden camera in their kitchen. As you can see from the screenshots, she's pouring Drano into his lemonade. Now completely terrified, Dr. Jack took this footage straight to the police. His wife was arrested, and he ended up also filing a restraining order against her, accusing her of verbal, emotional, and physical abuse, which he claims also extended to his 2 children. Naturally, he also filed for divorce. It's important to note that this case is still being investigated. The evidence against her is pretty damning. For more 7 Sin crime stories, you can hit that pause button.
The 30-year search for Nikki Allen's killer has finally come to an end. Nikki Allen was just 7 years old when she was lured into a derelict building and brutally unalived. The search for the missing girl lasted about 12 hours before they found her, but the hunt for her killer lasted 3 decades. Nikki was described as a bright and sparky child who was always a mummy's girl and had a beautiful smile. She was also seen as quite a clingy child to anyone that she knows, and she wouldn't trust strangers easily, so the person that took her had to be someone that she knew. Nikki went missing on a cold October night in 1992, and the news of her disappearance travelled so fast. Dozens of friends, families, neighbours were all looking around and searching for Nikki in the area of Hendon on the south bank of River Ware. It ended in horror and heartbreak as the morning after, a teenage boy had discovered Nikki's unalive body in a derelict building. On the day of Nikki's disappearance, Sharon, her mother, was doing some washing in their flat, and the youngest of the siblings was sleeping, and Stacey and Nikki were watching television. The noise of the washing machine, however, was giving Sharon a little bit of a headache, and luckily enough, her parents lived in the same flat building as them, so she took Nikki and they both went upstairs to Sharon's mother and father's flat so that she could get some painkillers. When they got to the flat, Sharon's mother was actually vacuuming, and Nikki didn't like the sounds of that. It was giving her a little bit of a headache, so she decided to go back down to their flat. This is the last time that Sharon, Nikki's mother, saw Nikki alive. As soon as Nikki's body was found, the police honed in on a local man called George Herron. He was actually 24 years old, and he was questioned for about 3 days. But because he was under interrogation, he actually gave a false confession. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to do a part 2.
Photos with disturbing backstories PT.16.
This is one of the most heartbreaking stories I've covered yet. This is the devastating murder of Ava Wood, which took place in January of this year. Hi, I'm Meg. I talk about true crime. Let's get into this case. Ava Wood was a 14-year-old girl who lived in New York, and she had a really promising life ahead of her. She was in the 9th grade and she was on the track team. She played soccer. She was an athlete. She was an honor student and her teachers and friends absolutely adored her. She was said to make everybody smile all the time, but everything would change on the 19th of January, 2023. Ava's parents were separated and she was staying at her father, Christopher's house. Her mother, whose name was Heather, called that night to check up on her, and she got a little bit concerned by the phone call. Christopher, Ava's dad, had a history of mental illness. He showed a lot of signs of depression, and that night they were really showing. Over the phone to Heather, he said, "This is how it ends for us," before hanging up, which it left her with a bad feeling. Despite all of her bad feelings, she knew that, well, she thought that Christopher would never, ever do anything to harm their daughter. Heather's concerns got worse the next day on January 20th, 2023, when Ava's school called saying that she didn't show up. That same morning at 8:20 a.m., Heather called the police to do a welfare check on Christopher and Ava. When the police arrived, they were too late and they just found an awful, brutal scene. Ava was found in her bed with a fatal gunshot wound to the head, and Christopher was found in a separate room, also with a fatal gunshot wound, except his was determined to have been self-inflicted, meaning that Christopher took Ava's life and then he took his own. I believe they're still investigating this case, but it is pretty straightforward what happened. I don't really have much to say about this case. I just think it's really heartbreaking, and my heart goes out to everyone who loved Ava and Christopher, because from what I could read, he was not a bad person. He was someone who was really suffering. Your mental health is very important and something that you need to be taken care of. So if you feel like you need to speak to someone, don't be ashamed. Do it. Get the help you need, because there's absolutely nothing wrong with asking for help. This was a shorter video today, but I think that it spreads awareness for something really important, and you guys have been asking for it, so I hope you enjoyed it. Enjoyed was not the right word to describe this case. Let me know what case you want to see next. Bye!
The brutal attack of Travis the chimp.
The chimp killed my friend! And the police up! With a gun! Please, hurry up! He's killing my girlfriend!
Who's killing your friend?
My chimpanzee!
Oh, your chimpanzee is killing your friend.
Yes. She's dead. He ripped her apart.
He ripped what apart? Her face?
Everything. Shoot him! Shoot him!
Travis was a 200-pound male chimpanzee that appeared in many movies and TV shows. But on February 16th, 2009, Travis finally snapped. The woman that you heard on the phone was Sandra Harold, the chimp's owner, and the woman being attacked was Charla Nash, one of Sandra's friends. Sandra tried to save her friend by bashing the chimp with a shovel and stabbing him in the back with a butcher knife, but that only made him more angry. Travis ripped off Charla's eyelids and tore off her nose. The chimp then scalped her, gouged out, and ate her eyeballs before chewing off her hand. Shortly after, the police showed up and executed Travis by gunfire.
This paranormal story made my skin crawl. A Reddit user who we'll call Emily had just moved to a brand new apartment in Melbourne, Australia. Now, it was Emily's first time living alone, and the apartments that she moved into were built in the 1930s. And well, according to her story, she goes to work one day, and when she comes home, she goes into the bathroom and sees something strange. A board that had been covering a hole leading to an attic space on the ceiling had fallen to the ground and split in two. Well, Emily picks up the two pieces of the board, and the board's like an inch thick. It would have taken like Bruce Lee level force to break this board. So Emily slowly looks up at this attic space that's now exposed, and she is suddenly frozen stiff with fear. And she's thinking, somebody's got to be up there. But then it occurred to Emily, you know what, maybe my landlord just sent somebody to do some work while I was gone. So she emails her landlord, a little bit annoyed, to ask if anybody had been in her apartment. Pretty quickly, Emily gets an email response from her landlord that just says, please call me as soon as you can. So Emily calls her landlord, the landlord answers, and Emily explains the situation, and Emily's landlord goes, "Oh, it happened to you too." Apparently this had happened to 2 tenants before Emily, and the landlord promised to replace the board. About a month later, Emily wakes up around 4 a.m. and her skin is crawling with goosebumps, and she says it felt like somebody was rubbing their hands all over her. And as she's laying there, like experiencing this sensation, everything is dead silent until all of a sudden she hears this sound above her head, and she describes it as sounding like somebody's dragging a sack of potatoes on the floor above her. At this point, Emily's really starting to freak out because this sound doesn't sound like an animal. After about 5 minutes, Emily grabs a cricket bat, gathers her courage, and creeps down the hall to the bathroom, where she looks and finds that that board that the landlord had replaced was again in the floor and broken into. Emily had a sick feeling come over her, and all of a sudden the dragging sound stops, but a new sound begins. It was a whispering sound, and she said it was clear as day, coming from the attic. And it sounded like children's voices, and there was one voice saying over and over, "It's your turn, it's your turn." So Emily dashes out of the bathroom and she flips on every light in the house, just trying to get something to feel normal. She even goes into the living room, turns on the TV, sits down, and tries to calm herself down when suddenly a fuse blows, and her pet bird all of a sudden starts squawking its head off like it's being strangled. This becomes the breaking point. Emily says, "Screw the bird." She grabs her car keys, runs out of the house, and closes herself in her car until morning. Finally, when the sun comes up, she sees people start going to work, walking their dogs, and she starts to feel a little safe again, and so she gets out of her car, goes back into her house to check things out. She goes to check on her bird. The bird is not in its cage. She finds her bird half drowned in the toilet. She moves out of that apartment and never looks back.
I'm so sorry! I'm so sorry!
We're just gonna put handcuffs on just for now.
I'm sorry, just pull up my pants.
Where's the knife?
Sorry, Dad! I'm sorry, I don't know what to chest! I'm so sorry, Mom! I'm sorry, please! I'm so sorry! You better pray to God I am sorry, Mom! I'm so sorry! I'm so sorry!
How old are you?
I'm 12 years old!
Where's the knife?
I was upstairs in my room and I threw it out the window, and it's behind the apartment right here.
You threw it where?
I threw it out my window upstairs.
Right
not
up here?
right there. It's the room. It's the other room. It's right behind the apartment. This apartment right here.
So where would the knife be? On that side?
Right behind. Yeah. The knife? I'm so fucking sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. This is some demonic shit. I'm so sorry.
What's your mom's name? What's your mom's name?
I gotta go with him. I'm so sorry. I don't know what the happened. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened.
Come over here so we're out of the paramedics way.
I don't know what happened. I'm so sorry.
Hey, what's your name? Seat for me. Sit crisscross on the grass, okay? Just sit there for a second. You don't have the knife on you, right?
No, I swear I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
Is there anybody else inside the house?
No, it's just me, my mom, and my brother.
Hey, how would I get to the knife? Is there the back side?
I can show you.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I really didn't want things to happen like this. This sucks. I'm so sorry. I'm probably gonna go to jail. I'm gonna live the rest of my life in prison.
That's it right there?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I don't know what
Do me a favor. We're gonna sit crisscross applesauce right here.
Okay.
Which one is it?
First apartment right here. Hey, she threw the knife over here.
Stay there. I'll look at it.
It's right there.
Okay.
I'm fucking crazy. I don't know what the fuck I did.
Stick your hands out like this for me.
Why?
Their fears would eventually turn into reality on February 6, 2023, nearly 7 months after her disappearance, when the body of Susana Morales was discovered in a wooded area between Drowning Creek and Barrow County. Medical examinations would confirm that she died between 10 p.m. on July 26th, the day she disappeared, and 2 a.m. on July 27th. Upon further investigations of the scene, only a few feet from her body, officers discovered a handgun. Although it was clear that Susana wasn't shot, police were certain that the handgun had something to do with the case, so they collected it as evidence and traced the serial number of the gun, and what they would eventually discover would shock the community of Norcross to its core. The gun was traced back to 22-year-old Dorville police officer Miles Bryant. This was a shock to the police officers who realized that they needed to investigate one of their own. When they took a closer look at Bryant, they discovered that he had reported his gun stolen just 2 hours after the Morales family had reported Susana missing. In this report, he said that he accidentally left his truck door unlocked, and that's how someone was able to get inside his truck and steal his weapon, his military ID, and his wallet. Police also noticed that Miles lived in the same apartment complex where Susana's friend was staying, and where she was last seen the previous evening. The evidence was starting to mount up, so on February 13th, 1 week after Susana's body was discovered, police arrested Miles Bryant. He was charged with concealing the death of Susana Morales, as well as for the false reporting of a crime. The warrant alleged that Bryant dumped Morales' naked body in the woods between Drowning Creek and Barrow County, and that he had previously given a false report that his personal car had been broken into and a gun taken from inside the vehicle. Police also stated that they didn't believe that Susana Morales knew Miles Bryant. After his arrest, it would also emerge that Miles Bryant had a history of stalking and harassing behavior, and that he had previous maladministration charges against him. Despite the police previously being made aware of these allegations, minimal action was taken against Bryant. In 2022, around the same time as when Susana went missing, a woman approached the Dorville police station complaining that she was being stalked by Bryant and that he had tried to break into her home. She said that she had known Bryant since the 5th grade, but their paths separated when they got older. Bryant tried to reconnect with her, and after chatting for a while, the lady decided that they didn't have much in common and distanced herself from him. After this, Bryant became aggressive and started to stalk and harass her. She felt that she was being watched, and someone even tried to break into her house, breaking the panel on her door. She also approached a neighbor who had a security camera, and after reviewing the footage, she saw a person who she believed to be Bryant trying to break into her home. Although he was trying to hide his identity, one frame caught him looking directly at the camera. Bryant's behavior was so aggressive and so intimidating that the lady actually feared for her life, and she ended up getting a firearm to protect herself. She reported his behavior to the Dorville Police Department, but nothing was really done about it, and the department only gave him a stern talking to. Bryant was also accused in 2018 of trying to break into a neighbor's house by entering through a window. The neighbor actually called the police, but when they arrived, Bryant denied that he ever tried to break in. After a bit of back and forth, the neighbor decided not to press charges, and no further action was taken. In October 2022, there was another allegation against Bryant, and he was actually charged departmentally for his actions, this time for maladministration. A family had reported their child missing, and Bryant was responsible for drawing up the report. He took 3 days before finishing the report, while federal law requires it to be done within 2 hours. For those 3 days, there was no record of that child being reported missing, and Bryant was eventually written up. It's unclear if the missing child was ever found. On February 23, 2023, Miles Bryant appeared in court and was informed that his charges had been upgraded. He was now also charged with the murder and kidnapping of Susana Morales. His lawyers indicated that they'll be applying for him to be released on bond. The motion for the bond hearing is scheduled for May 1, 2023. The Dorville Police Department has also recently announced that Miles Bryant has been fired from the force.